Here's a few news stories that I thought were interesting. Kaspersky is going to have a large language model security training that might be good. I know I'm teaching AI security next semester at City College. It includes a lot of other AI features besides large language models. And there are a lot of security problems with large language models. The most important one being command injection, prompt injection, which is currently unsolved and leads to all these models being disturbingly unsafe to use. And here's another example. This has been demonstrated. You can train a model to change its behavior in response to a cue, just like there's this science fiction staple where somebody's been hypnotized, and when you speak the magic word, they change personality and become a killer or something. And you can really do that with AI. And the problem is, if you have done it, there is no known way to detect it or to reverse it. And that's the fundamental problem with AI. You train a model at great expense on billions of pages of stuff, and then you end up with a whole bunch of weights, like 4 billion weights, which are the mathematical representation of a simulation of all that stuff. And nobody knows how the weights correlate to behavior. So if it does something you don't like, you do not know which weights to adjust to make it stop doing that. It's very much like the human brain that way. So that's the problem. We don't really control AIs too well, and we don't really understand why they do what they do or how to change it very well. So if you did poison an AI and make it learn to do something bad, we don't know any way to detect it or reverse it. So that's an issue. In, I think, Oklahoma, they are forced to use Donald Trump's Bible and teach the Bible in class, which would seem to be a violation of the separation of church and state, but I don't think they care down there. And so anyway, now they're looking at what the Trump Bible contains. And the Trump Bible contains the King James translation of the Bible, which is badly out of date and considerably inaccurate, by the way. But it's a standard at a lot of churches. But what's more interesting is it contains a very old copy of the U.S. Constitution, which is so old it's missing most of the recent amendments. Like it does not have, haven't removed the 3/5 compromise, where slaves count as 3/5 of a human for counting people. It doesn't include the amendment that abolishes slavery, the 14th Amendment that gave the right to due process and granted citizens equal protection under the law, the one that granted women to vote, and so on. It is strange and disturbing that that's the one Trump chose to include in the Bible, and I think it kind of shows his whole philosophy. He wants to roll everything back to a very long time ago when black people were not full citizens and neither were women. Anyway, it's an interesting, although disturbing thing to see. So J.P. Morgan Chase, the number one bank, the biggest bank in the world, has decided to go all in on AI, and like everybody else, they say they have implemented a bunch of AI, but in fact, they're light on the details. And what everybody says is when you actually try to see what it did, you will see that AI is going to take a lot of training on the staff before they can actually get much good out of it. And like I said, the European Council in charge of these things a few months ago made a prediction that AI would increase the productivity of workers by 1% over the next 10 years. And if that's true, it's hardly even worth doing at all. Most Americans are investing in it as if it's going to multiply the productivity of workers by like a factor of 5 in the next year. They're thinking we're going to have smart as a human by the end of this year and superhuman in a year or two, and then AI will just do everything and we'll live in a science fiction utopia. And I think it's extremely obvious that that is not going to happen. And the huge problem with AI is the economic bubble. We've invested incredible amounts of money in AI. We're using an incredible amount of power for these data centers. And there is no sign of any product coming that is really going to earn all that money back. They're going to have a product that is as popular as the iPhone, where everybody needs to buy one. Everybody thinks it's the greatest thing. And so far, the products they have with AI are not that impressive. And Microsoft can't even get people to pay $20 a month for Copilot. So we'll see. But everybody's still betting that some enormous, wonderful product is right around the corner in America. Although more and more of the serious people are losing faith. So this happens a lot. This woman had a startup and she lied about how popular it was. Her startup was to make it easier for students to apply for grants to go to school. And she claimed that she had like 4 million customers, but she had less than a tenth of that, 300,000. So this was not all that rare, I think, in Silicon Valley to exaggerate things by that much. Donald Trump certainly exaggerated his real estate holdings by at least a factor of 3 and more. But anyway, she got 7 years for that. And I wonder, if she just didn't hire the best lawyer, or maybe women just get a rawer deal. Martha Stewart got a very long sentence. Other people, much longer than other people, that did pretty much the same thing. Anyway, well, not Martha Stewart, maybe her too, but also the woman that started Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes. She got a lot of years in jail for the kind of fraud that other people do not get that much punishment for in Silicon Valley. And the same thing in Argentina has previously, in the previous administration, they had a large push on trying to do something about abuse of women. Apparently women have very few rights there and they get killed and stuff. And now the new administration there has removed all the progress towards taking crimes against women seriously. And so a drug cartel murdered 3 women and live streamed it to a group of 41 selected people. And this sparked outrage, and they're having 7 people arrested for it. And so this may have some effect. I know in India there were similar cases in the last few years where just outrageous crimes against women provoked the society to confront the fact that they're very unfair, they don't protect women, and they need to do something about it. And this may have some beneficial effect there. We'll see. So sudo, we're using it in this class. It's the command that escalates you to administrator temporarily to execute a Linux command, and it has had a critical flaw for a long time where you can escalate to sudo even though you're not in the sudoers list, so anybody can achieve root. And this has been found, and the patches exist, but the patches are not in the repository for Debian yet. I tried updating my Debian sudo, and it still remained on the vulnerable version. There are often privilege escalations, and people don't take them too seriously. But this is a thing to be aware of. That barrier, where somebody gets user control of a machine and they have to overcome a barrier to rise to administrator or root, there are often a lot of ways to do that, and they don't seem to get patched very quickly. I've never used the F-Droid store. This is apparently an alternative store for Android apps, and they're very proud of being better in their regard than the Google Play Store, which is certainly possible. The Google Play Store is full of malware. But anyway, Google has interpreted the European legislation that is going to regulate smartphone markets. Apple is very mad because the European regulation says you must allow third-party markets for apps, which Apple never used to. But you're allowed to have some control over them. And you have some like approval rights for the apps that go in there or something like that. So Google has always had all kinds of open markets everywhere, and they're interpreting this as their opportunity to change Android so it will only install apps that Google has approved and signed. So there would be no more completely independent third-party apps. And this F-Droid is very upset. This would shut down their site, or it would place them under the control of Google, which they don't want to be. So we'll see what comes of that. Anyway, that's enough of the news. Let me stop this one.